The reciter of the Quran should also try and remove anything that prevents him from understanding. For example, shaitan inciting that you have not properly recited a letter, or you didn't produce it in the proper way. And so the reciter begins to repeat. And by doing that, they redirect their attention to producing the proper sound as opposed to understanding the meaning. So shaitan would even come to you in this form and say, oh, you didn't pronounce that right. And so the one who's reading becomes fixated on producing the sound as opposed to understanding. So you see the way shaitan works is, you're reading the Quran, the first objective is don't read the Quran. But if he doesn't win and you continue to read, the next one is read but don't understand. Because by understanding is how you find guidance. So it's read, how can I keep them from understanding? Distract them with something else. And that may be, besides all of the other, mindlessly reading, but you didn't pronounce the ba correctly. You pronounced it pa. So then you become really working the lips and the tongue to get the right sound. And you forget about what it means. You forget about the meanings. Also, in that regard, avoiding things that will prevent you from understanding, and these are the deeper meanings here, the inner dimension of understanding, that is being continuous in sin. This will prevent you from understanding Allah's book, or having the qualities of kibr, being haughty and egotistic, or being tested with desires that you constantly obey. Right? You constantly submit to your fancies and your desires. And this is a cause for the heart to be engulfed in darkness and to be corroded. It's like a mirror that's been covered with something and prevents the truth from shining forth. The heart is like the mirror. And the desires, they are like corrosion. The meanings of the Quran, they are like images that appear in that mirror. You following that? Right? You following that? So the heart, the Quran, it appears in the heart like a reflection in a mirror. If the mirror is all foggy and it's covered, then you're not going to see those images as they truly are. You're going to get just a portion of it, or you're going to get, you might not get anything depending on how covered the mirror is. The same as with the heart. If the heart is corroded, you can't expect that the meanings of the Quran will enter it. Right? So if the heart has been diseased or it's been corrupted, you're not going to be able to understand the Quran. You won't understand it. And so this is the nature of sins and the nature of following one's desires. He says, so exercising the heart, if you will, riyada, which is kind of to work it out, is to exercise that. Meaning here, the jihad and nafs is what we're talking about, is to struggle against the heart. It is to stomp out those desires. And to do that is like polishing the mirror. Right? So that's what one of the objectives of purifying the heart and the soul is that you can understand, you'll be blessed to understand the meanings. When you can rid your heart of diseases, you open it up, you invite Allah's his knowledge, you see. Those things, they don't go together. Sin, and the light, it's like light and darkness, right? So light is like the knowledge. It's knowledge is light, and ignorance is darkness. You can't occupy, those things can't occupy space at the same time. They're constantly vying for space. Right? So if your heart is cloudy and gray and it's it's how are you going to get light in there? You have to remove that darkness. You have to remove those clouds from the heart in order for there to be light to shine through. Also, the reciter of the Quran should know that they are intended. They are being addressed. When you're reciting the book, it's you that Allah is addressing. He's addressing you, and He is also warning you and promising you of things. You should also know that the stories of the Quran, they're not bedtime stories. They're not bedtime stories, but they're lessons to be learned. And so you have to pay attention to that. And when you are reading, you are a servant who is reading the book of his master. It's as if you're reading the instructions of your master. You are the servant of Allah, like a servant that's taking instruction from their master. Right? So when Allah is giving you his book, he's instructing you. And Allah is your master. So that's the relationship. It's one of master and servant. Allah is the master of the universe, and you are but one of his creatures and servants. And so you should reflect over that book. You should reflect over that book. And it doesn't make sense that you reflect over it and you do not act upon it, but you have to act upon the directives of that book, refrain from the sinful things. It just doesn't make sense that a person would read the Quran and constantly be reciting it and then living in contradiction to it. It's just a terrible situation to be in. Also, that you, as a reciter, or as one that reads and reflects, that you remove you free yourself from your own capabilities and your own prowess. Don't look at yourself and be happy and be astonished. Look, I've been reading, I've been reciting, how amazing am I? And rather, you should look at yourself in the light of deficiency. You say, I've given a little bit of effort. What I've done it's not befitting of a servant of Allah. You look at yourself and you say, look, I've completed the Quran in 1 month. You say, the Salaf, they did 60 times in 1 month. You say, what I've done is nothing. And you could imagine that among those, like for example, we said Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah completing 60 times in Ramadan. You could imagine that an imam like him would be looking at that accomplishment and going, if only Allah would accept one ayah, one kalima, one harf. Because you begin to then deconstruct your intention, deconstruct your understanding, deconstruct your what you're actually capable of doing. So that's important that when you do good deeds, you try and minimize them in your sight. And when you minimize things in your sight, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will magnify them in his. Right? And the opposite is true. If you start to magnify your good deeds and look how much and what I've done, then they will become minimized with the reward of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the same thing can be said about sinful things as well. A sinful thing, when you begin to minimize it and make it trivial, then it grows and it magnifies. When you take the little things that you've done and you feel like you're standing under a mountain, then Allah will minimize them for you as well. And that is the conclusion of this chapter. A couple of great things coming up, inshallah. We have one more session tomorrow for this program. And what we're going to be looking at tomorrow is... What was that? Inshallah, we have one more tomorrow. You're right, could be.
I'm just saying maybe.
Who knows, man? But if not, then we'll meet again.
A couple hours.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to look at Qiyam al-Layl tomorrow, since that's what we've been doing. There's a section in the book about Qiyam al-Layl. It talks about some of the virtues of Qiyam al-Layl and some of the ways in which you can make it easier on yourself. Since we've started some good habits, we'll leave with some instructions on how to maintain those habits throughout the rest of the months to come. Jazakallah khair wa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam ala nabina Muhammad.